Hey guys, this video is going to go over the 2017 FRQ number 1. Now, keep in mind that this FRQ comes from the 2017 AP test. So it's a very good one to look at because, this is how it's going to look when you get your AP test here shortly, and just keep in mind that this is the level of difficulty that we're working at here, okay? So with this one, we have this digits class, and we're working on two different methods here. So the first one is actually the constructor for this class. And what we want to do is we want to be able to give it an integer. So then we're going to be taking all of the digits in that integer and storing it in an array list. So each digit will have a spot in the array list. So the first thing that we need to do is actually initialize the array list. Now, we've already been given digit list above here, but we have to actually initialize it, meaning we need to create a new array list of integer objects, if I can spell. So that's all we have to do here. We're just making a new array list of integer objects, and that's what we're doing to initialize that digit list array list up here. Now, we have the possibility of being given just the number 0. Or we could have, I think the other example they gave was like 1000, or it was like 15407, something like that. So each digit would hold its own spot in the array list. Now I'm gonna go back and do the, consider maybe the number we're given a 0 at the end. For now, I just want to act like we have a normal number. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna have a while loop. And we're going to say, while this number is greater than 0, what we basically want to do is a combination of division and modulus division. So remember, if we want to get, just like the ones spot of a digit, we could do mod 10, and what that would do is it would divide whatever number we have by 10 and then give us the remainder. So for example, if I had the number 205, if I did mod 10 of that number, it would give me just the 5. So what we're going to be doing with this is, instead of working from the leftmost digit to the rightmost digit, we're going to actually start with the rightmost digit. So we're going to get the 1 spot, store that in our array list, then move to the 10 spot, store that in the array list, then the 100 spot, and so on. That's going to be easier because I can get that rightmost digit by doing mod 10, and then I can remove that digit by dividing the entire number by 10. Because remember, if we have an integer, let's say 205 again, if we divide that by 10, it's going to truncate the 0.5 and just give us the 20. And then we could do mod 10, it's going to give us that new 1 spot, which is really the 10 spot, and so on. So we're going to have a while loop. So while the number is greater than 0, it's going to continue this process. Now, I highly recommend that you watch that wrapper class video on adhesive, because it talks about the difference between an int and an integer, which is actually like an object. Okay, so the wrapper class is basically taking that primitive data type of an int, and it's creating like a class object, and we need to do that because array lists can't hold primitive data types. So basically, we're storing it as this integer object so that we're able to actually put it into the array list. Now, I know that's kind of weird, and it makes things a little trickier here, but the general, how should I say this? The general concept isn't that challenging. This is really just testing to see if you know the difference between an int and an integer object, and how to make that work with an array list. So basically what we want to do here is, because we're going to be changing this number that we're given each time. Okay, so our parameter num up here, since it's going to be having some modulus division and regular division done to it, I'm going to create another variable that's going to store what is currently, what that number currently is, since we're going to be doing some division to it. So to do that, we're going to actually create a new integer object, and I'm just going to name it current because that's the current number we're working with. And it's going to be equal to a new integer, and I'm going to make it equal to num mod 10. So it's going to be equal to the rightmost digit of number, or just num. Okay, so since it's just the rightmost digits, we can then go ahead and add that, and I'm going to add it. I'm going to put the 0 here because we're always going to add the next digit to the beginning of the array list, because we want it to be in the same order that it started as. And since we're starting with the rightmost digit and moving to the left, I always want to put the new digit at the beginning of my array list. So I'm going to put the 0, which is the position I'm adding it at, and what we're adding is current. Now remember, the array list can only store an integer object, not just an int. That's why I created an integer object named current and actually made it equal to what number is mod 10. The other thing that we need to do here is we need to actually take what num is each time it loops through, and we need to divide it by 10 so that we can move to the next spot to the left in this original number. So again, this would be like if I had the 205, this is what would change it from 205 to just 20. And then when it loops back through, it's going to grab that rightmost digit. I'm going to divide by 10. Then I have just my 2, and then it's going to take that and it's going to put it in my array list. So this part here is what's making our numbers smaller each time. It's what's helping us get to the next digit to the left. When it loops back through at the top, this is what's grabbing the rightmost digit itself. Now, this was considering that we had some number that was greater than 0. Okay, if we actually had just the number 0 given, which was one of the exceptions they discussed in the FRQ description, it's not challenging. You just have to remember to actually include it in your code. So let's say that the number we're given is equal to 0. Well, that just means that we're going to add a new integer 0 to our array list. And again, I can't just put 0 here because that would be a primitive data type. Okay, the array lists have to hold integer objects. So I'm creating an integer object of 0 and then adding it to that array list. So that's it for part A. It's not a lot of lines of code, okay, but it is a little tricky. I just realized that I didn't have this bracket right. So that should be it for part A here. Now, I thought part B was a little bit easier. Okay, part B is checking to see if this array list, the digit list, is in increasing order. So really all we need to do is we need to check to see if each element or each object in our array list is smaller than the one that comes after it. Keep in mind that means that it can't be equal to the one before it either. If I had like 2, 5, and then another 5, that wouldn't be increasing because each number would have to get bigger. If 2 are the same, it's technically not increasing. So for part B here, we need to be able to return a Boolean here, so we're going to be either returning false if it's not an increasing, or we're going to be returning true if it is increasing. So this is just a basic for loop here. So I'm going to start my for loop at 0, and I'm going to always be checking the current object with the one that comes after it. So because of that, I just want my for loop to run one less than how many objects are actually in the array list. So let's say I have 5 objects in the array list. I only want to run up to the 4th one, because at the end I'm going to be comparing the 4th to the 5th object. If I ran it all the way to the 5th object, it would be trying to check it with the 6th, but it's not actually there, so we're going to get an out of bounds error. So I'm going to run I up to it being less than, let's see, what was it called? Digit list. Remember, it's an array list, so it's dot size here, and then I'm going to do -1, and we're just incrementing by 1 each time. So now in our for loop, we need to check to see if the one that we're at is greater than or equal to the one that comes after it, and if that's true, we're going to return false, because that means that this array list, or this number, isn't in increasing order. Now the way we have to do that is a little tricky. Now remember that digit list is an array list. So to look at what is at spot I have to do dot get I. And then one of the things they talked about in the video on adhesive, that wrapper classes video, is if we actually want to look at the primitive data that's stored in that integer object, we have to use int value. Okay, so that'll actually give me the integer, the int that is stored in that integer object in the array list. Okay, so that's going to give us an int there. We want to check to see if that's greater than or equal to the one that is at I plus 1, which would be the one that comes after it. And then again, we're going to do that dot int value to actually give us the primitive data type there. So this is just our if statement. If that is true, that means they're not in increasing order, so we're going to return false here. And then if it makes it all the way through that for loop and it never triggers this if statement, that means that it is in increasing order. So after our for loop, we need to come here and we should return true. And that would be it for part B. I think that was a little more straightforward. The part that you probably are going to get tripped up on is this dot int value. Again, if you watch the adhesive video, it explains it pretty well, so I would highly recommend doing that. I'm not going to here just for sake of time, trying to keep this video as short as possible. So hopefully this was helpful, guys. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and have a great day.